Ready?
Yep. Welcome to Slightly Off Script, the marriage show where we remind you that marriage can be stupid good and wicked fun. I am one of your hosts, Bethany Needham, here with the real interviewer today, Mr. Andy Needham.
I have a lot to live up to. You are the legend of interviewing.
Legend. It's audio only, but I'm bringing in video to prove that now we don't have to get dressed up. Sweatpants. We got our guest room set up here.
That is not what we're talking about today. I have to say, we've set up this room, which has been our studio, in preparation for your brother and his wife to come over. And I'm kind of thankful that we have shifted away from the video camera setup because it would have looked with the bed in here like a whole different kind of show.
It looks like a very different kind of podcast.
Which is, we could talk about such things, but we will not be demonstrating.
No, there will never be tutorial videos.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah.
What's been a highlight of this week?
Oh, gosh, man, on the spot. Highlight of this week, the weather's been gorgeous. Honestly, as silly as it sounds, I made the decision. Actually, you encouraged me, and I went and got mums and pumpkins.
Hardy mums.
Hardy mums?
Hardy, not herdy.
Yeah, Hardy mums.
You stole mums from Market Basket, actually.
Okay, it was not theft. I feel like there was some confusion with the children that were working in the checkout.
Which is basically who runs Market Basket.
Yeah, and I just explained that, hey, I would like to purchase 2 of the larger mums, the Hardy mums, but do I need to go outside and grab them, or can we just ring them up and then I'll grab them on my way? The kid's like, yeah, I'll go outside and get the scan, so we can scan it in. So they did. She gave me the sticker that said 2 mums to show that I had gotten them. But when I got home and I looked at my receipt, I'm like, there is no way.
What did they charge you?
They charged me $10.
Total?
No, for each one. But they're huge.
Yeah, that's half price. I looked today because I was at Market
Really?
Basket. I was like, yep.
I got 50% off my Hardy mums.
Mm-hmm.
So
buy one mum, get one mum free.
One mum free.
Easy for me to say.
Yeah. So I was not trying to rob them.
And we got to go this last weekend to one of our favorite fall spots, one of our favorite fall hangouts, which is Gould Hill Farm.
Yes.
Which is, I think, in Hopkinton or Kentucky.
Yeah.
Kentucky, New Hampshire. And it is apple orchard. There are wild flowers there you can pick, which you've done that in the past. But one of our favorites, we might have talked about this last week, but we went there. All the apple cider donuts and all those things. And then downstairs you can get like charcuterie or flatbread pizzas and cider flights. And it's a good time.
Yeah. We had a charcuterie board.
Charcuterie.
And it was delicious. In fact, I did get some of the pepper jelly from the store after because that stuff was delicious.
You are always talking about food on this show, and I'm tired of it.
It's
just kidding.
Yes, for real.
And it's usually me talking about food. So
it's because I'm always hungry.
All right. Well, this week I'm taking control of the podcast.
Okay.
I've always been the editor, so ultimately I've had control.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure you've been in control the whole time.
But I decided this week that I'm going to interview you, and the focus of our week are lessons that you've learned from your first year, almost a full year, coming up on it, back in the workforce, full-time. Big shift for you.
Yeah.
And I want to give a little bit of backstory. So we'll start there, kind of what you decided to do and how you came to it. But then I want to spend most of our time today talking about the things that you have learned. Maybe some things that God has revealed to you, maybe some things that have surprised you, both in terms of the work that you're doing and the field that you're working in. So we're going to talk about both things today. Does that sound good to you?
Bring it on.
All right. Here we go. So let's start with the backstory.
Yeah.
We are about a year ago from now, and maybe even a little bit before that, we had been preparing to launch our daughter, our youngest, off to college, and we moved her in. We went on our, what did you call it?
Baby moon. No, it wasn't a baby moon. Sorry. An
Empty
empty
nest
nest
moon
moon.
is
Yes.
not a baby moon. That is a different thing.
Surprise.
I would know by now. It's been over a
Yeah, for
year.
real. I'm the gestation of an elephant.
I don't know a lot about pregnancy, but I do know.
Yeah, no, it was an empty nest moon, but it was based on the idea that people do baby moons. And I was like, why don't we do it when we launch our babies? So,
But how are you feeling though about that transition in terms of what you were going to be doing?
how was I feeling
Yeah.
then? It was surprisingly overwhelming. I was very young when we started having babies. And so I didn't necessarily have some sort of career trajectory. In fact, I was really committed to just being a wife and a mom, a hearty mom. And so I just felt, I was really all in on that. I had some side jobs here and there. I did work at a church, which was incredible. And that I would say was the closest that I sort of experienced of a career type role. But when it finally came time to launch Mercy, there wasn't really a lot of clear, like, I didn't have something in my mind that I'm like, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to go after. And it felt a little scary, just like a wide open abyss.
Yeah, I remember nights where you would be on different job boards and like, I could do this or I could do that.
Yeah.
Maybe I could do this. And, what I love about you is you're always persistent and willing to try things. But it did seem like, when you're shooting at everything, maybe you're shooting at nothing kind of a thing. So you had a conversation at your gym one day with somebody who you had worked with previously,
Hmm.
who then eventually became, again, a coworker with you. So talk about that conversation and how God kind of gave you the prompt to have that.
Yeah. So I had been doing a lot of searching on Indeed, spent a lot of time on Indeed, and was feeling very honestly just stressed about it. And I remember a lot of friends telling me, it's got to be so exciting because, you could do anything you want. And that seemed like that should be really exciting. But actually, it made me feel one, almost like, shouldn't I have this figured out? And two, just it was almost too much. And so after spending a lot of time Indeed, feeling increasingly anxious about it, the more time, the more like jobs I was looking at, I finally, why it took me so long to come to this, decided I needed to just stop and pray. And God, what would you have me do? And it was in one of those moments I was at the gym and I saw an old coworker. He was there training with a few guys. And so I felt like God nudged me to go ask him about what he was doing, what was he up to. And it was in that conversation and a few afterwards that I learned about this thing called recovery coaching. I had never heard of this before. At the time, the things that he mentioned were very appealing to me because I had a personal training certification. And so he was doing a lot connecting with these.
But recovery coaching, yes, there was a component of it that could be fitness, but it was recovery, people recovering from drug and alcohol
Yeah.
addiction. Just want to be clear about,
Yeah. So he basically was like, he's working with these clients that are part of this particular, it was called Capital Recovery. And so he was like, listen, I do everything from, yes, we work on their physical health. So he brings them to
Yep.
the gym, things like that. Anything that is helpful in the recovery journey. Like as a coach, you're kind of a resource for them and helping connect them to different things. And there was a lot more to it. But as he spoke, I remember just resonating with a lot of things that I was really interested in. I loved to work with people. I love the idea, like holistic health is something that I feel very passionate about. And this was kind of in that arena. And then he mentioned that they did have women in their program and that female coaches was something they didn't have a lot of. So there seemed to be a possible opening in this field. So that's where it began.
And there's a lot of stories about the process when you first went to meet the owner and all the conversations that happened there. I remember like all the conversations we were having in there, but long story short, obviously it led to a job.
Yeah.
Originally you went into it to become a recovery coach and you got trained in that.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll probably talk about this, but God kind of led you in the same field, in the same location, into some different types of leadership that was surprising to you. But let's start with just talking about the shift from, part-time work, primary focus in the home, to having this space where now you're working back in the marketplace. Like, what was the hardest part of shifting from home rhythms to full-time work again?
Honestly, just the actual rhythm of it, like needing to be someplace at a certain time, day
Putting
after
on pants
day.
every day.
Yeah, like it sounds weird, but when you've had the flexibility of kind of building your own schedule, I very much remember one of the challenges was I needed to figure out how to continue my own healthy rhythms and
Mm,
patterns in this new schedule, and it wasn't as easy anymore because I needed to be at an office at a certain time. So I couldn't just go to the gym. I Mom's hours were like my favorite at the gym. I was like a 9:30 a.m. workout person. That was my prime time. That doesn't really work
no,
with office
they frown on
hours.
that.
Yeah, they prefer you be in there a little sooner. So it was adjusting, having to learn new rhythms, new patterns. And then the other thing I just remember standing out for me personally was this felt like the first time that I was stepping out from behind a lot of things. I was no longer Andy's wife. I wasn't.
In this field. Let's be clear on this marriage podcast.
This ended
You
our
weren't
marriage.
known.
I was not. No. We have an announcement. No, just kidding. Yeah, like I was not known as Andy's wife. I wasn't known as Josiah and Mercy's mom. And that had been so much a part of everything else that I did that there was an intimidation to that.
Yeah.
Like I can't lean into those things. Like it's just me. And I've heard other people talk about it, but it does you almost I've called it middle-age adolescence. Like that's what it has felt like
Yeah.
in some ways. Like who am I?
It's kind of a first day of a new school kind of feeling, because in those other environments, when you're like, what is the point of reference?
Yeah.
Like, my point of reference is this other relationship or this thing that I'm known for doing, or that I'm a volleyball player, whatever it is. And
Yeah.
when you go into a space, like, you think that that's going to be over in actual adolescence, but even in middle age, when you go through these transitions and you don't have a point of reference,
Yeah.
it's that can be disorienting.
And I think coming from our just not just being in the home, but a lot of what I've done over the years has been connected to our ministries. This was the first time for me I was stepping into a field, into a community that nobody knew who I was.
Yep.
And like having to get to know people.
There's someone like, Andy Needham from the Andy Needham band.
Yeah,
Like,
nobody was
no.
like, wait a second. Are you married to, do you know Andy Needham from the Andy? Nobody, literally 0%.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Nobody knows. But also just there is kind of a cool part of that. Like
Yeah.
you're building
Yes.
trust, building relationship, but it is a little, I don't know the right word, but it triggers insecurities, to be honest.
I think disorienting might be a way to say it.
Yeah, disorienting, because in the same time people are getting to know me, I feel like I'm getting to know myself. So
Yeah.
I'm like, we're all in this together.
Well, it is a revealer because it's kind of a clean mirror, which is an interesting thing. So what surprised you the most? Like, what is something that you didn't expect about returning to work?
I did not expect the skill sets that it turned out that I've developed over the years. I actually was surprised by people's response to me. Like the first time that somebody's like described me as organized or a system builder or things that I actually probably would have said that is so not me. And I was surprised that in all of the years, even being home and all of these things, that there are parts of me that I didn't realize that not only am I capable of, but I actually enjoy these things too. And so that actually was kind of surprising to me, like to be the one that they're like, so you're organized. I was like, I'm like looking over my shoulder. Who are we talking to?
Well, it's such a gift. When you're on a different team, there's different needs. And also just stepping out, like when you're in the same space all the time, you don't necessarily always see the growth that's happening in you. And so I feel like this has been a season, like for me, I get to see from afar where you're like, oh, God is actually really, he still has kept you who you are, but he's really
Mhm.
developed some muscle in areas that you're like, I would have said that I don't have muscle in that area.
Yeah.
And over time, you're like, no, you actually have a lot of muscle in that area. And you also have a lot of muscle.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
What was most helpful to you in that transition?
I mean, I think this is going to sound like you set me up for this, but you did not script any of this. I think your grace for me during that time, and also I feel like you stepped up in a lot of ways to support me while I all of the change hit pretty hard. Like everything from helping with, you've always done a lot of meal stuff, but I feel like you've gone above and beyond to help me with meal prep. You've been very understanding and supportive of me trying to figure out my health routine. Like, honestly, you let me try a couple of gym things and things that I'm like, nope, that's not it. And having your support in that has been hugely helpful because it hasn't all been like smooth transition. Some of it's been kind of bumpy and figuring out how to do things. And I also think you've done a really good job of lovingly challenging me when you start to see things that you're like, hey, not a huge deal, but I've started to notice, because I am an all in personality. And sometimes I need to be reined in terms of, hey, you still do have a family and a home. You can't live at the office and only be at work. And so that's been really helpful in the transition.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Because we're still married. Just want to be clear about that.
I am still Andy Needham's wife.
You're my one and only hearty mom.
That's right. You
So,
didn't get a 2 for 1.
no, I didn't, nor do I want one. You're plenty.
Fair.
Large personality, hearty mom.
I received that.
So, let's talk about the field that you chose to go into, because this was not on your radar before. And a lot of your coworkers, many of them, come into the field of drug and alcohol recovery because they have their own story in that area, which is very powerful and a really cool thing about your field. However, that was not your story. And you went into this space not really knowing, other than you've always been very empathetic and you want to do something on mission, which I think those two things were probably what drew you to the idea of this work. But explain to us a little bit about like going in there, not knowing, what are some of the big takeaways? Kind of what is great about the recovery world?
Oh, goodness. I will say one of the things that is interesting, I find it great because I find it fascinating that the recovery community to me mirrors so much of the church world, which I am very familiar with because I've grown up in it. And one of the things going into this, like I've never gone through treatment for drug or alcohol addiction. That's just not been a part of my story. So coming into it, the imposter syndrome, that can be very strong and very real. But very quickly, I started to be like, wow, even though obviously two different kind of worlds here, so many things are actually, in terms of we are human beings, and there are so many things that actually remind me of things that I am familiar with. So the recovery world, there are different kind of groups within the larger community of the recovery world, similar to churches. There's different types of churches, different denominations. And it's interesting to see some of the feelings that different groups have towards one another. And this isn't like a blanket statement, but
No, I've observed this. Like there's definitely a recovery community,
yeah.
which is really great. And then there's also, just like in the church, some people are like, well, they do it that way, and that's not the way that you're really the best way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have people like it's this way or no way. And people that define recovery, people define sobriety different. Like it's very, again, I find that very interesting, and it's been fun to step into and get to know people within this community, within this space. And I honestly think it's one of the most beautiful groups of people in terms of a people that is so loving and like can be so loving and empathetic. Just grace poured out. Now, again, I'm speaking for where I work, which is Capital Recovery. I again have not had a broad experience, but where I work, the way that I watch our team love each and every client that comes to the door and just honestly look at them as individuals and where they're at and just care for them in a really unique way. I just in some ways I'm like, man, I think the church there are a lot of churches that could probably do some training in this department.
Yeah, I think that the element that resonates there, I've heard you talk about this, giving people dignity when they're in this space of brokenness, or they're broken. Maybe they don't realize their brokenness. Or, there's a whole spectrum of people experiencing different things, but that's the imago Dei, the image of God, that everybody is an image bearer of God. Let's describe the environment that you're in now. Your program is called a partial hospitalization program, which means it's a day program. So people come in for, is it 5 weeks? Is that correct?
It's around 5
Around
weeks,
5
yeah.
weeks, and they're in group.
Yeah, so they go into groups, so basically small groups,
Yep.
that there's a group facilitator, there's teaching, there's discussion, there's, a number of different things can happen in that time. But it's almost like going to school in some ways. So
Yeah.
they get there, they go into groups starting at 9:30, and then the day wraps up at 2 p.m. And there's like a couple of short breaks and a lunch break.
And you have like the juniors who are new to the program and the seniors, and then eventually if they complete the whole program, they get a certificate of completion. And there's other types of recovery spaces, which again, we're not going to exhaust that all today. But so your role is within the center there. Talk about a little bit about, you went in, you got certified as a coach. That is not really what you've been doing predominantly, though.
What are you talking about? No. Yeah, I went in and went to take the classes for the certification to be a recovery coach. And my boss actually invited me from the beginning, like, hey, would you like to come into the clinic? Possibly, like, there could be things that you could help with there. It was really kind of a let's just see, because honestly, both of us were like, I've never worked in this field. I'm coming in completely green. Who knows what I can or cannot do? The one thing I knew that I could do from other experiences is I wasn't afraid of teaching or leading small groups. And I think that was something that appealed to him because he's like, hey, if you're able to do that, that would be helpful in terms of the clinical side of things. So, yeah, in fact, I arrived at the center. I did not know this, but my first day at the center was going to be their first day in this new facility. They had just moved to this center and it's chaos, right? Like you're arriving.
Well, it's always chaos. This was extra chaos.
Yeah, it's actually
it's kind of a good orientation for you, though. Like, let's go in when it's as crazy as it's going to be.
Yes, it was just it's funny to look back on, but everything from like, do we have toilet paper?
Yeah.
Or is there paper towel in this building? It was all that kind of stuff. And I just stepped in from the beginning. I was like, God, I have no idea what you have in this. By the time I arrived on that first day, it was beyond clear that God had opened this door. And so in a lot of ways, I was stepping in with open hands because I'm like, I have no idea what I'm getting into, but here we go. And so it was really just a being willing to do anything and everything. And then it sort of shifted into a see things that needed to be done and just do them. Like, don't wait to be asked necessarily. Intakes was probably one of the first things I learned. That's when a new client comes in. There's a whole process that has to happen. So I got trained on that because I could immediately be helpful anytime there was a new client, pull them in, do an intake. I went from that to learning how to facilitate a group. So I started leading groups for the first time. That was terrifying.
This is another parallel. The church world has its own language. The recovery world has its own language. There's so many abbreviations for one thing. I kind of laugh all the time because you're like and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then, even I remember like somebody said, play a game about the name of drugs, or you're like, I'm
No,
gonna not, yeah.
So early on, it was one of those things where, and I would do this too, if someone came to me in the church world, like you don't realize the things that are just, you say that you're like, oh, this is insider language. And so nobody knows where I came from. So there's just sort of this assumption, like everybody knows the lingo. Everybody know, because if you grew up around this, you would have known.
Absolutely.
So they had a group that like they needed to throw someone in. It was supposed to be for fun, like a fun group on Friday. And they're like, "Hey, can you lead it?" I was like, "Sure."
What do I do?
What do I do? And they're like, "Well, you can play recovery bingo." And I was like, "Great. What's recovery bingo?" And so a coworker of mine showed me they literally had this bingo game. And I was like, "Well, how does it work?" And she was like, "Oh, well, so if they get this one, this square, then they have to give you like 3 street names for cocaine." And I was like, how am I going to know if they're right? And I was like, I don't even know 3 street names.
ChatGPT, give me 20 names for cocaine.
But it was just funny stuff. And I also was like, but also, how does that help our recovery? So it was just really funny at the beginning because it still is. To this, a year in, it just to me is a reminder that when God calls you to something, like sometimes I think we can get caught up in needing to be fully, like, I got to know everything. I got to be fully equipped. I got to have, whatever boxes you set out. And the fact that I was thinking about this the other day, I'm like, I'm almost a year into working in drug and alcohol recovery. I have no business on paper having the job that I have. And yet I can't imagine working anywhere else. Like I just
So good.
love what I get to do.
I remember when you first started the job, you're like, I'm never going to have an office. I'm going to, and now you have an office. You've been put in a leadership role, there's a whole leadership team there and there's all kinds of different, focuses that some of them need medical certifications and different things.
Yeah.
So you're not like the boss, but you have been given a role of really making this kind of the clinic run an operational function.
Yeah.
Some of it was just seeing things that need to be done and doing them. One thing I just want to call out here, maybe this is a good way to talk about it. You've been able to rise in leadership and deepen in relationship with your coworkers in a way that I'm sure is not perfect. However, you have great respect for your coworkers. You have great relationships with them. They have great respect for you. And so going into a new field that you didn't know anything about, from my perspective, rising quickly in leadership, but doing it in a way that was really empowering people. Like, what have you learned from that? What have you seen from that? Like, what advice would you give to somebody else who's stepping into a new space? That's a big question.
It is a big question. And I don't know that I'm the expert on this, but some of the things that I've tried to be intentional with, first of all, to serve and love my team before I had any leadership, is to just look for ways to be helpful to them, look for ways to support them. One of the things I try to be careful about is if I was taking something, whether it be authority or influence in something, that I was very careful about lifting up the person who that's their arena, that I'm not just jumping in, stomping on toes, taking over the world here. But I really wanted to build trust, not inauthentically, like to build trust and help people understand that everything that I'm doing, I want to do to be helpful for you and the organization. This is not turf wars. I'm not competing with you. I would say small things over a period of time, just consistently showing up for people in little things, I think, sort of feeding the evidence to that I'm not trying to take over anyone's job. I actually want to help lift other people up. And that, honestly, that was a big thing for me. I came in and I looked at the team and I thought, how can I help each one of these people individually and then collectively as a team for them to be able to do what they do to the best of their ability?
Yeah.
Because even though I sometimes feel like an imposter, like sometimes I feel like my role is I have this amazing team that I get to work on who all do have experience and understanding that I will never have. Like I will not go back and live all of that. But the best thing I can do for them is to platform them, is to take the unnecessary kind of load off so that they can press into their magic. I call it magic a lot, but I think it is magic. Their special gifting, unique stories, everything else. And that could be everything from, you said I have an office. The reason I have an office is a coworker that I worked with had this office. It's a tiny little closet space. And that coworker was working towards with a degree, working towards being a clinician. And so part of like my thinking and part of what I wanted to do was, hey, I want to advocate for this staff to move into a clinician office. And then I ended up slowly moving into the little closet, which I will say I've made.
It's pretty amazing.
It's adorable. It's my little it's my little work
It's an
office.
ice box though, but yeah.
It depends on the day. It's either really, really hot or really, really cold. There's nothing in between, but it's fine. It's mine, and well, it's not mine. It's Justin's that he lets me decorate and
Yes.
use, and I love it.
Yeah, I really have great respect for Justin, who is one of the owners and what is his title, the
CEO.
CEO of the organization, and then all your coworkers. Many of them we've been able to host over our home, which is an incredible thing. Which brings me to my next question. You're working in a space where spirituality is an open conversation.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's not an abundance of Jesus followers currently in there. And so you're known as a Christian in this world where some people are very anti-faith, other people are open to all faiths. How have you been able to walk? What has been your posture as a Christian in this space?
I think this is probably an ongoing, it's changing day to day depending on the people that I'm engaging with. I've had some really interesting interactions, specifically with clients who have had really hurtful experiences with people who have claimed Christianity. So for them, when I say that I am a Christian or that I follow Jesus, it immediately hits nerves for them. And so one of the ways that I have tried to posture my own faith is I actually do speak very openly about it. And if you've been in any group with me, with clients or otherwise, I usually, if I find myself it's going to come out, I'm like, hey, I really can't filter my faith. So I just want you to know I'm not saying this to be offensive to you, or I'm not also expecting for you to agree with all of this, but this is what I believe. This is a course. So I can't say what I need to say and somehow cut that out of the equation, because this is who I am, and this is what I believe. And it's been amazing to watch the people who have come up after and asked follow-up questions, or, hey, I'm actually really interested. I was talking to a client the other day about the Bible app, and he was showing me, I found this reading plan and I want to start reading the Bible. I think walking humbly in my faith, when I say that I'm a Christian and that I follow Jesus, I think I've come to understand and be careful about how that lands for people. And what I want more than anything, and I try and be intentional with clients and coworkers, is I want them to experience in my presence and who I am to them a love and grace and compassion, that whatever hurt they may have experienced before, that it actually helps reopen them to the conversation of, okay, maybe this is worth rethinking this. Maybe what I've thought when I thought Christian or Jesus follower isn't as hurtful and hateful as maybe I've experienced.
Yeah. Well, I think you've done that. It's encouraged me. It's taught me a lot from the outside looking in, and the way that you have tried to walk that. A couple more questions as we start to wind down. But one of the heaviest things about the field that you work in is that it is a field where loss is significant. And you've had loss. You've lost, when I say loss, I mean not only losing back to addiction, which is not uncommon, but also even losing people that you have worked as clients, and even coworkers that have passed away. And you knew that going into this, but then you've had to walk that. And I feel like from my perspective, there have definitely been some really low moments in that, but that you have guarded your heart and kept a soft heart in this process. And how do you feel like that grace has been able to sustain you?
It's funny you bring this up, because I was cleaning out some paperwork in my office this morning, and a note fell out of one of my books that I had kept, and it was a note like a really encouraging note that a client had written to me, and this client has since passed away from overdose. A coworker was in the office, and we both kind of had this moment where we got choked up just remembering this client because they were, we loved them and it was a hard loss. And I was like, I think I used to put a lot of pressure on myself to like hold it together through, because there is a lot of loss in this field. And man, if you're just bawling all the time, like it's not really a professional vibe. But I've also come to this place of being not just gracious towards my own emotional response, but remembering that sometimes the tears that we shed for these clients, it's a beautiful reminder of, it's like a celebration of the life that that client lived. And there are some clients that we have that don't have family relationships anymore. Like, again, addiction has robbed them of a lot. And so sometimes I think it's part of the beautiful honor that I get to remember them in their lives and the fact that they did live and they were made in God's image. And, obviously my heart and my prayer is for them to know Jesus. And this client in particular, the one that wrote me a note, had made a profession of faith right before they passed away. And so for me, the tears are actually sadness, but also joy that they can't, like, they had a relationship with God. And yes, in the end, addiction or drugs unfortunately took their life, but to be able to have these moments of emotion, I think it's okay to feel those things. And at the same time, it's helped me in giving myself space to feel it, that I'm not overwhelmed by the emotion. Some ways I think what makes it overwhelming is when I try and stuff it down and not feel it. And then I don't know. I don't know if it just grows and builds inside, but it just gets to be too much, versus I've learned along the way that it's okay to pause and cry. And it's actually not unprofessional to do that in front of other clients too. Like, again, I don't want to bawl my eyes out, but in some ways I think it has meant something to the clients to be like, wow, you actually care about us.
Yeah.
Like we matter.
Yes.
And they do. Their lives matter. And again, some of them, they have been cut off by most of the people in their lives. And so for them to be able to witness somebody that genuinely, authentically loves and cares about them, and even if that's just them seeing us mourn the loss of another client, I just think it's a beautiful opportunity. And it's an honor to remember these lives, because they don't always even make the paper. You don't always see them on the news, but every single one of them is God's creation in his image. And yeah, I honor them and love them and remember them, even in my emotions.
I knew that was going to get you emotional. So
Yeah, rude.
it's okay. Yeah, I commend you for that, the soft heart. I think you've also kept good boundaries, which could be a whole nother conversation. But I want to mention one resource, and then I want to ask you a final question about marriage in this transition. Because you are still married to me.
I'm still married. I was going to say that.
Maybe share with the listeners about the John Ortberg book that's been helpful to you. Do you remember Steps?
I know you're putting me on the spot here.
No, well, I just want to mention, I mean, just why it's been helpful to you, because you don't have to explain the book in depth, but it's sort of this intersection between your two worlds of recovery and faith.
Yeah, having somebody do like in-depth research on essentially AA, like the 12 steps, and creating this book that isn't just for people who are in recovery. It's actually, they basically are making the point that everybody's the target audience, right? Like we all have these things, and there is something for all of us to learn when we really dig into the 12 steps from AA. John Ortberg's book was really, really good, really interesting. I mean, there's so many resources out there, but that one, I love him as an author. And when I saw that he wrote on this, I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
this is crazy. So
Steps by John Ortberg, definitely recommend that one for sure.
yeah, it's fairly new. It hasn't been out very long, but
he's also on the podcast circuit and talking about it too. If you want to, our friend Dave Ripper got to interview him on his podcast, which is great. So bringing this back home, because this is a marriage podcast, not a cooking podcast.
Contrary to all of my conversation.
What has this season taught you about marriage?
I don't know if it's a learned lesson yet, but I would say that similar to my comment about middle-aged adolescence, I think I am finding this transition of going back to work full-time in a job that is separate from the ministry that you do full-time feels a little bit like marriage adolescence. Like we're sort of rediscovering each other and our relationship, and that's not all been easy. Like some of it is challenging and feels odd. Like it feels like a weird, we're figuring things out all over again. There's some of it that's really fun and beautiful, like the empty nest. We sort of have that freedom to pursue these things. Like I can go to work full time, and I don't have kids waiting at home for me. But I would say the thing I'm trying to figure out, or I'm still navigating, is making sure that we're intentional with coming back together, because I do think full-time work and these things, we can both get excited about these things that we do, but it could easily sort of drift you sort of into your own lanes. And so just for me, it's been that learning to press into one another, I would say, is just that it takes a lot of intentionality, and I'm not always really good at it. Like, to be honest, sometimes I think it's easier in some ways to press into a job and all of that than it is to like, no, we also are still figuring this out. We can't put this on autopilot.
Yes.
While we're in drive at work.
No, that's really good. I feel like even I look at this year, like I feel like we both, with new jobs and this whole transition, like there is a natural honeymoon, and that's not bad. Like that's not a bad thing. Like we're kind of like, hey, we can go out to eat as much as we want to, and we can do and some of that is enjoy that. Like I think you need to not fight against that. But then you once you're into it for a while, like every job and every marriage has a lot of we talk about this all the time. There's a lot of mundaneness, and as you get into that mundaneness, like the temptation is to not continue the work. And I'm committed to keep on going, because even if I'm not known as your husband, I'd like to continue to be your husband. So
I appreciate that.
I will not let the judge
I'll remain as your hearty mom.
You've done a great job today. You were a great guest. I'm definitely having you back on the show.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe next.
I think that would be important, because otherwise it'll just be me talking to a microphone and very few people listening. So
Awkward marriage podcast.
Yes.
The wife gets booted.
That is not great. So yeah.
Well, thanks for interviewing me. You did a good job at interviewing.
I did. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
I'll probably have you back.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. We are looking forward to being back, hopefully next week. We have to figure out, we're not going to be able to record in here because we'll have guests in here. So we're going to have to move the studio.
I think it'd be super fun if they're just sitting back there.
Live audience.
Live studio audience.
Yes.
Awkwardly sitting in the bed.
Well, I think Lisa is one of our super fans. So there's like a
Perfect.
contest. Like if you listen enough, then you get to come spend a
Sit
week.
in a bed in the studio.
Spend a week in the studio.
That's weird.
That sounds like punishment. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. We appreciate you. Share the podcast. That's how this thing grows. And we will be back next week.
I mean, only if you like it. If you don't like it, you don't have to share it. We don't want to make it awkward. But like it, share it.
Like it, share it.
We love you.
Bye.
Bye.